Hey there, and welcome back to the show. This is your host, Brett Hawes, and we're back with another awesome episode. Before I hop into today's show, just a little bit of housekeeping and an announcement. I do have the digestive health practitioner masterclass coming up on September 21st. If you are a health professional who works with people in a clinical setting in the nutrition, health coaching, dietitian, naturopathic space, you definitely want to check that out. We've got a lot of people coming to the live event, which will be in Toronto. But if you're not in Toronto, we do have a bunch of people that are signing up that are outside of Toronto and doing the online version. Okay, so you can check more details at holistichealthlive.com. So you definitely don't want to miss out on that. I probably won't be doing this again this year, and it will happen again, hopefully January, February, somewhere around there. So holistichealthlive.com, you can check that out. Now, on to today's show. I have the Mudman, affectionately known as the Mudman. His name is Marc Saint-Onge. He's the CEO and formulator of NuWTR, or Black Oxygen Organics. And today we talk about fulvic and humic acids, which is a topic that is quite close to my heart, something that I've been interested in for many years now. And I've sort of cycled through different products as they've come and gone off the market. And when I first came across this, I obviously was super excited for a number of reasons. One, if you don't know what fulvic and humic acids are, you should definitely tune into today's episode. Fulvic acid, humic acid, and trace minerals are a vital part of overall health, and I feel the missing link for a lot of what we're doing. And the reason why is people are largely trace mineral deficient because the soil is trace mineral deficient. All right, so the soil is deficient, the plants are deficient, and therefore the animals and people that eat those plants are also deficient. And that has a pretty big cascade effect in terms of our health consequences. Listen to the show and you'll hear why, but I want to whet your appetite with the following and consider this. Fulvic and humic acids increase all nutrient absorption across the board. And this happens at the cellular level, right? So they enhance cellular uptake of nutrients and drag in 60 times their own weight of nutrition into the cell. They will then take 60 times its own weight of toxins out of the cell. And what fulvic does is it pulls water into the cell so you get cellular hydration, and then splits that water into hydrogen and oxygen. So you get cellular oxygenation, and the hydrogen will actually shift the pH as well. So very, very powerful stuff that really works with anything else that you're doing. Okay, so no matter what you're doing, no matter what health regime you're doing, there's very, very few drug interactions, so it's super safe. And it's something that I've been using for a really long time, both on myself and in my practice. Now, as you know, we don't have any advertising on the show, but today is one of the ways that you can help me and you can help yourself. So if you click on the link in the show notes, you can also visit the website, right? So just click on the show notes and you can visit the store and pick yourself up some product, all right? So personally, I like the drops, right? So 5 mils a day. You can do that 1 to 3 times a day. The sachets are also quite convenient. You can throw them in your handbag or your bag or whatever. And yeah, you'll be helping yourself. You'll be helping me. So I think I'm going to leave it at that. Just those 2 links again, holistichealthlive.com, and you can click the show notes for product, right? So for NuWTR product. So yeah, I'll leave it at that. As always, if you enjoy the show, please consider subscribing, reviewing, and sharing this with your friends, family, and community. So I bring you today Marc Saint-Onge AKA the Mudman. Hey, Marc, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me today and getting stuck in the mud, I guess.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you for the invite.
Wow, I don't know where we're going to start or where we're going to land up today, but I think you and I both have a lot of, just having gotten to know you over the last while, I think we've got a lot of parallels, a lot of similarities in terms of our journey. And also we've, you a lot more than myself, been working with fulvic acids, humic acids, trace minerals and stuff like that, which is why you came to be known as the Mud Man. So perhaps let's just sort of peel things right back. And I want to ask you, give us a little bit of a sense of your background, because I understand it's quite varied and you've been doing this for a really long time. So just sort of sketch the path to get you where you are today, if you can.
Sure. That would be great. Well, it started very, very young. I remember, I was 8, 9 years old. My mother was always intrigued about taking care of her skin. And she used to go to the grocery store and buy exotic fruits and peel them and smash them up and put them on her face to see what it would do. And so from a young age, I always was fixated to taking care of my skin. I've always had a day cream, even during my teenage years, the acne, and I was treated by my mother, and camphor oil and lotions, and So for me, taking care of myself was a way of living from an early age. So when I got involved in my mother's aesthetic business, she had 2 schools, and I'm not going to hide it. The first thing was because it was a woman industry and I liked women. But the second thing was it was something that I believed in. And so I started studying aesthetics and skincare, studied the skin, and moved to Ottawa to really ramp up her business here in Ottawa, because we come from Sudbury. And my job was to promote it. And I've always looked at, my mother would say, beauty's only skin deep, but it's more than the face. And so we have to one day take care of the whole body. And that was in the mid 80s, 82, 83. So during that journey, he was always looking for ways to start promoting the body treatments. And in those days, the word spa did not even exist. We were really innovative in saying, well, we got to treat skin problems, but on the whole body. So my job was to find products or different ways of treatments to bring in a school protocol, a school curriculum for body treatments. That was my first job. And so I got involved in a lot of the seaweeds and the clays and the muds. And that's where we dipped and dabbed in these types of product, because that's the first thing we used to do with body treatment, is do body wraps. So we got involved in seaweeds from France, and we started using that. And then we went to a trade show, and this lady was talking about nutritional re-education. And we're saying, well, yeah, if you're fat and have cellulite and you have muscular skeletal problems, it's got to be because what you eat. And so we invited this lady over to the school, and she gave a conference to the students, and her husband was an orthotherapist. And started talking to me about orthotherapy, and I said, wow, this is kind of cool. This is maybe something I would get involved. So he says, and at the same time, in those days, I wasn't very healthy, even though my mother thought I was healthy. I used to drink 2 to 3 liters of milk a day, and I was clogged. Mucus.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
I had allergies, skin problems, and this orthotherapist says, your problem, he says, you're a little calf and you drink too much milk, because milk is for cows and it's to grow hooves and horns. And I looked at it and said, what the hell are you talking about? I was brought up with milk, and that's the only thing we had in our house. And he said, if you want to start breathing, come and see me. So I actually went to his clinic in Drummondville, Quebec. And I spent a week there. And he put me on this detox cleanse. And the only thing I had to eat was soup, watered down soup and water. And then I went through colonics. He gave me 3 little pills, and it made me go to the washroom. And within 7 days, I was breathing. I couldn't believe it. This is kind of cool.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I was going around his clinic, and I was seeing therapists doing these mobilization and massage. I said, man, this is something. I still have the goosebumps when I talk about it. And this is something I want to do. Well, he says, yeah, it's easy. Take my course. Okay? Because he had an orthotherapy course. So I trucked down from Ottawa to Drummondville for 3 years, and I took his program. And then when I graduated, I brought that into Ontario, into my mother's school. I paid into his program as a franchisee, and I started teaching orthotherapy in Ontario. And that developed into the whole orthotherapy college that I had for many, many years. And I was the first orthotherapist in Ontario. Now, back in the day, we were alternative medicine. So we weren't considered recognized, right? So we were kind of under the radar, and I was like really ramping up like 50, 60 patients a day. I had 3 therapists working for me, and the chiropractor and the medicine on the same mall were saying, what the hell is he doing? And when they started investigating, they got jealous, and they called the RCMP, and they said I was practicing illegal medicine. So they came in and they took pictures. They seized all my files. They shut me down, and I was charged for practicing illegal medicine in 1989. Yeah, it was kind of weird. But anyways, all that to say that I still believed in the training as an orthotherapist, and I set out myself to get it recognized. So, founding a professional association, working with the RMT College to get us approved, working with the governments to get us approved, still training people, moved my business to Hull, just outside of Ottawa, so that I can continue training because I was not allowed in Ontario. All this because I believed in orthotherapy, and I believed in the way this holistic approach was treating people and healing people. But at the same time, we were always looking for innovative products in the aesthetic world and in the body treatments. And so every summer we'd shut down and we'd travel the European countries. It was nice. So you take a holiday. At the same time, you visit different essential oil suppliers, herbal remedy suppliers. And that year, I was meeting up with a Dr. Ehrlich in Germany, in Bad Wurzach, in Sonnenberg, in the northern part of Germany. And they had a sanatorium in which they treated people for musculoskeletal problems, but they treated it with this black mud. So I went there, and I met this doctor, and I spent a week there, and seeing how they were treating. I was actually a patient. I took full submersible mud baths, with the cap on it and a strap around your thoracic area with cold water, because you were submerged in this 140-degree mud, and you'd sweat really, really, really a lot, and then you had a massage, and then you go into saunas. In other words, like, you felt like $1 million after that. And I said, Jesus, I'm really impressed about that. So I entered into an agreement with that company and started importing the mud. And then I was putting this mud in a Ziploc bag, and I was giving this to my patients. So on a Monday morning, if I had a patient coming in, I would give him a Ziploc bags with 2 baths. So I'd say, you take one on Monday night, you take another on Tuesday night, and I'll see you back here on Wednesday, because I'd see them 3 times a week.
Right.
Well, sure enough, after 2 or 3 baths, these people were starting to say, wow, this is fantastic. I didn't believe in this black mud, but when I take the bath, I feel great. I've got no more pain. Can I get another bag to give to my aunt or my uncle or my aunt, that has back problems? So it was just like an exponential growth, which I wasn't even aware of, but I was doing almost 500 of these Ziploc bags in my garage. It was like, it became a whole business from that concept of just putting it into a Ziploc bag.
Wow.
And so that's where I got the idea of saying, well, if this could be a great business to bottle it, and coming from Sudbury and playing in bogs when I was young. And knee high in mud. So we got the same stuff here in Canada. So let's do some research. So I just started doing research in different bogs and peatlands across Canada, especially in my native home and up to Rivière-du-Loup, where there was huge peat bogs in Rivière-du-Loup. And I brought it to a lab, and I asked them to analyze for the humic acid content, because that's the ingredient I was looking at before. That's how I was trained, in humic acid. And just settled on 2, 3 bogs, but the one here in Casselman was the closest to where I was in Ottawa, and it contained 36% humic acid, which is like, wow, this is kind of cool, because the German mud was always 8 or 10%.
Right.
And so I went back to Germany with my mud. I had a bucket of mud, and showed them our peat, and they fell in love with ours, and they started buying mud from me. And so
everything flipped over, right?
The business turned around, and I started selling that to them. and they were buying so much that I had enough money to say, well, I'm gonna start my own. I'm gonna found my own company. I'm gonna start bottling mud, and that's where the challenges start. You know, when you want to bottle mud, you kind of look a little bit crazy. And that's where my name comes from, because when I moved to Casselman, there was 1,200 people in that village, and I had to go through the village committee. So there was like the mayor and all the councillors, and there was like all like youth. I felt like I was in court when I go there one evening to present my business plan of bottling mud, taking mud from their area, and building a building and doing that. And there was 6 people on the committee. 2 people loved my idea: the mayor and a rich businessman in Casselman. These 2 believed in my project. And the mayor really, really helped me. He got me the land, he got me the building, they financed it. It was like a Casselman business development. They were building it for me. I had free taxes, but I had to go get a loan. I had to go get a $75,000 loan for the whole project. And when I went to the National Bank in Casselman, my business plan and my project, the manager said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "Well, I want a bottle of mud." And as soon as I said that, she started laughing and couldn't stop laughing. So I said, I got up and I left. And I said, I never went back to the bank and never got financing. And it was financed by my father-in-law, who gave me the opportunity to become an orthotherapist, and my mother. And so in 1992, I bought the land. 1994, we were built and we were actually officially started. And that first year, with a bucket of mud and a bottle of bottled mud with pine essential oil, we did $500,000 of sales.
Wow, incredible!
Yeah, so that's the story. And from there, we just continued increasing our business with the spa industry, growing all over Canada and the United States, and then expanded in the world. We exported in 17 countries. Our biggest market was the Asian market, and then we continued with over 89 different products and different recipes, and so we treated everything that imaginable in the holistic health, from skin problems to inflammation to not saying that I cured a lot of diseases, but this product was amazing in the spa industry. When you had a therapist that believed in it and used it, they had great results.
Yeah. Well, so I just want to circle back to one thing, just so that I'm clear, because an orthotherapist, I mean, are we talking about doing manual manipulation as well as working internally? Is that really a good sort of definition? Yes. Or
Yes. So holistically, orthotherapy is 3 phases. So it's a 3-year program. The first year is massage. So you're actually becoming a massage therapist, because the saying is you can't bend steel without heating it up. It's the same thing with muscles and bones. You can't bend it. You can't manipulate it if you don't warm them up. So massage was the first thing that you learned. So I became a Swedish massage professional. And then we started to dab into aromatherapy and herbology. But the second year, we specialized in aromatherapy and herbology. And then it's a technique called kinesiotherapy, which is movements. Okay. Kinesy means movement. So kinesiology is the study of movement. We were treating with movement. So we had active, passive, and contrary movements to muscle structures that we learned to rehabilitate a joint.
Interesting.
The third year, we specialized in traction. So we had an elongation traction with all those.
Okay.
Yeah. So we did that, and then we specialized in Reiki, trigger points, emotional issues triggered to mind, body, and soul. We went into the process of everything's correlated to energy. We did trace mineral training. Specialized techniques from different people all over the world, and that's the orthotherapy training. So, wow. And then of course we had to do a thesis and prove the thesis in front of everybody, and then you become part of the professional association.
Okay.
Yeah, and then it was recognized, and even insurance started paying our treatments. So.
Interesting. Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of listeners will probably be very interested in that as a program or training, because it sort of fits in line.
The school still exists.
Great. Yeah. So, I mean, very much in line with what a lot of our listeners are already into. Obviously, the title of the show is Holistic Health Masterclass. So go figure. But let's sort of move forward a little bit because, I want to sort of get into a bit of the nuance here and perhaps a little bit more of the sciencey kind of stuff, right? So, you mentioned that the products being exported globally, but being used in more of a spa setting. So, let's first of all, I think what would be good and useful for our audience is to define, when you say product, like we're talking about mud. But let's sort of go a little bit deeper, right? So what is, when we talk about fulvic acids, humic acids, trace minerals, perhaps sort of like give us some definitions there. What is fulvic acid? What is humic acid? Where do they come from? And we go from there.
So the product comes from peat. The slang word is a swamp. Wetland is another word. Those are areas that is comprised of plant decomposing through thousands of years. So a peat bog is actually over 1,500 plants, and they took the plants while they were living took the energy from the sun and took the energy from the soil and the inorganic structures, and they turned that into phytohormones, and in the fall they die and they decompose, and that landfill fills up. And it creates quite a bit of peat. Now, the peat bog here in Casselman or in the Ottawa Valley is very, very large. It's 45 kilometers long by 25 kilometers wide. It's very big.
Oh wow, that's huge. Yeah,
very big. The Ottawa Valley is very rich in black earth because farmers here have 2-3 crops and they're very rich, and that's one of the reasons why is because of the black earth. So peat bog, when they decompose, they go through a humification process, and this humification process, through thousands of years, this is not just 2 or 3 years of composting, creates a bioavailable biochemical compound called humic acid. And a lot of people say, "Oh, it's acid. It's dangerous. It's the pH is very low. Blah blah blah. It's not good for you." So, but when you do research on humic acid, it's actually very alkaline.
Mm-hmm.
And this humification process creates a black product, which is carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, and then in that particular humic acid, there's a formation of fulvic also. So you can separate fulvic from humic, but when you do, you use a lot of chemicals to separate it. So it defeats the purpose of being holistic and organic. So I don't do that.
Interesting. So quick question. So fulvic and humic acids are normally found together in nature. Is that right?
Yeah.
And would you say historically, I mean, we'll get back to the sort of peat bog in a second, but historically, as far as I understand, fulvic and humic acids were relatively abundant pre-industrialized farming, right? Like just around, because everything would decompose naturally year in, year out. And it's my understanding that with modern farming techniques and what we have done in the industrial sort of age, we've really lost a lot of the fulvic humic acids. Is that right?
We did, and because of the pesticides and fertilizers in our soils. And 100 years ago, before pesticides and fertilizers, how would they enrich their soil? They would enrich it with peat bogs and peat moss, the degradation of plants, right? So and then pesticides, how they were managing the pests were through essential oils and herbal remedies. I mean, that still exists today. If you use
that's biodynamic farming, right?
Yeah. I mean, they had no problems then. They were just sold on pesticides, but rosemary oil and eucalyptus oil and, all these essential oils sprayed on the plant. Not only was it, repel insects, but it was also help the photosynthesis because it would remove the dust off the plant. So they were able to get more rays of the sun. Everything was pristine. Everything was and when men came in with pesticides, I think that's where.
Well, yeah, because I mean, the pesticides basically kill all of the microorganisms in the soil that are doing the humification and decomposition, right? So
that's why you have to put fertilizers, because you're taking away what's on the earth. So yeah, so fulvic humic was very readily available. You know, in the European countries, these peat bogs were also used for fossil fuel. They used to heat their homes. So what they did is dig trenches and get rid of the water. They dry the peat and they put it in blocks and they put it in stoves to heat their homes. That's one of the reasons why the Germans were interested in mine, because it was pristine. It was pure. It wasn't been used and abused. Like you go to the Black Forest now, or even in Nedhachting in Austria, you can't extract mud out of the bogs anymore because there's none left. They've dug trenches and ditches where there's no more bogs. So they did not help the replenishing of that environment. So they can't use it anymore.
Yeah, well, I would assume it's essentially a question of, you know, much like a lot of environmental issues, taking more than you can regenerate. You know, it's the sort of like net loss over many decades, right? So I want to just bring us back on point to humification and these fulvic and humic acids. So we're talking about plants that have essentially decomposed year in, year out over many thousands of years. We've got all of the trace elements. We've got fulvic and humic acids. One question I had for you was, this is just something I thought about, and perhaps you have an answer, is would we also find the sort of phytochemicals and phytonutrients in there? You know how herbs have their medicinal properties. Have these also been sort of distilled down into the through the humification process? And then second question would be, I would assume a lot of those plants don't exist anymore as well, right?
Absolutely, yes. When plants live, you have the gender. You have a female plant and a male plant, so they create the same type of hormones in their bodies or in their living species. So when they die, these what they call phyto or phytohormones are in this bog, and it's one of the benefits of eating or applying mud on your skin is that they contain these phytohormones, and it regulates your own normal hormones.
Oh wow! Okay.
You have, you know, even like these hormones and these biochemical compounds create natural penicillin, for example. Like we've written penicillin on an ingredient list at one point. People just shy away, say, "Oh my God, I'm allergic to penicillin." But we're always talking about natural antibiotics created by plants through their hormonal structure and their phytohormones. And so natural antibiotics exist in peat. So you know, if you have a viral infection or even a bacterial infection, you can actually eat peat or drink fulvic to help the immune system fight off the bacteria.
Wow, that's kind of crazy.
Phytohormones are an important component of fulvic and humic, and it's all because of the plants. It's really an organic world. And those plants give us the tools to use for herbal remedies. So if you look at different plants, at 1,500 plants, and you look at the herbal remedy of each plant, they're still in the peat. So you're actually a herbalist when you actually use fulvic or use humic, because they're all there.
I would assume then, obviously, they're not in like some crazy high concentration, right? I mean, we're talking really about trace elements.
Always in trace.
Yeah, which I think is useful for people, because there's, you know, when you hear about phytohormones, you know, just the word hormones coming in from the external, I think a lot of people are still quite afraid of that. You know, like, is it going to have negative side effects? Is it going to disrupt my hormones? And from what I'm understanding, probably not.
No, absolutely not. And because it's homeopathic in
right.
the sense of the world, it doesn't counter affect the medication or the drugs that the doctors prescribed you. So a lot of people say, well, should I consult a doctor if I'm going to start using fulvic? Well, you can, but it's not going to affect the effect of the medication you're taking. But it will strengthen your system. So eventually you might want to go back to your doctor, and maybe the milligrams or the concentration of the medication will be reduced. And I've had that a lot in my practice, in the years of practice, where, for example, somebody had a high blood pressure problem. Like 40-year-old, they start having high blood pressure. They go see the doctor, they get rat poison, they start taking the rat poison, the blood pressure goes down. And 2-3 years later, they haven't really regulated or solved the initial issue, which was the pancreas. Eating too much sugar creates pancreatic problems, increases the high blood pressure. So the doctor gave a symptomatic solution to the high blood pressure. Now they have a problem with the pancreas. They're diabetic. So now you're treating diabetics. That's a classic. And then so when these guys would come and see me, I would say, okay, you're going to start taking 2 or 3 mud baths and taking supplementation. They would see a change in their blood pressure. And sometimes even, taking insulin or the diabetes disappeared. And so they go back to their doctor and they take a blood pressure and they say, well, your blood pressure is stable. And then they would try to reduce the Coumadin, the prescribed drugs. And I've seen guys, and I'm one of them, where you actually don't take drugs anymore.
Wow. And yeah, I mean, that's obviously appealing for a lot of people, just in the world that we live in. I'm talking about you and I and many listeners. There's tons of people that are just really sick and tired of taking meds for side effects, for many other reasons, So I think that they are, this is why the field of natural medicine, holistic health, and so on has really exploded, because people are sick and tired of taking drugs day in, day out, dealing with the side effects, the costs, and everything else, the collateral damage that comes with that over many decades of taking these meds. So I think, that's definitely quite appealing to people. So let's just, I want to sort of start with the external sort of application. Because, you talk about mud baths and you talk about masks, right? And I think for a lot of people out there, we might still view that as very cosmetic. Simply I'm going to do a clay mask so that my skin looks nice and clear. And obviously that's one of the benefits, but perhaps you can sort of elaborate on that a little bit more. Why would people want to do that?
To do a wrap, like the
so body wrap or the clay mask. I mean, I'm not sure exactly what your applications look like. So perhaps share with us how you would do that and what the benefits are.
Well, the first products that I produced was a body wrap and a mud bath. So the body wrap was just a plain mud. It was a paste of mud that you would apply directly on the skin, a very thin layer, just covered with your we used to use spatulas and then gloves and then hands, and then wrap it up in plastic, and then you will lay in that for 20 minutes. That was the easiest application.
Is this full body, like head to toe? Wow. Okay.
Yeah, full body. And then wrapping it up, you cut the oxygen, because when you cut the oxygen, the peat has the ability to go into the subcutaneous tissue by a process called osmosis, right? But you had to cut the oxygen, so you had to bring up the body temperature, the epidermis and the dermis and the subcutaneous tissue where the bloodstream is, and it goes right down into the subcutaneous tissue. And many things occur, many biochemical reactions occur when that happens. It takes about 10 minutes for it to happen. It takes 10 minutes to absorb, bring the body temperature up. So of course in a spa, you'd massage them, you'd go into the sauna, maybe take a bath. They were, the skin was prepared, the pores were open, put the mud on, wrap them up, suck it up, put a blanket or a toque over their face to push the heat back in. One of the first things that happens when you did the mud wrap was to increase body temperature. So at the same time, when you're laying down, relaxing, listening to nice music, you're raising metabolism. So if you're not, doing anything, you're not eating, the body would go into the stored fat cells and burn them off. So first thing was weight loss. So we started selling weight loss. When they were losing weight, they started getting less pain. Bone density improved because they weren't leaching in their bone marrow to bring their body down to an alkaline state. We were alkalizing their body at the same time. And then the skin, let's talk about the skin. They had skin abrasions, scars, psoriasis, eczema. And while wrapping, they were saying, oh, Jesus, that's all disappeared. And so it was all trial and error. But and then I went to Austria and I met Dr. Stober, who actually wrote the first book on the science of humic and fulvic, and created a book called the talking about the 5 benefits, and one of them was cell regenerator. And so when we saw that, we started talking about patients coming in with pain and inflammation, but they had psoriasis and eczema, and we treated that at the same time, and with tremendous results. And then, of course, in aesthetics, we were always looking for an acne prone product, and this was astringent and very firming. So when we apply it on the skin, it has the ability to draw out impurities. So for acne prone skins or blackheads, it was just amazing. Estheticians were going crazy over it. So we had that facial mask that you let dry, and you had that non-surgical facelift. So then we created a non-surgical facelift mask, which was like very popular because they would use that maybe an hour before going out. Nice skin, nice reddish skin, put makeup on, you look like $1 million, right? And you do the same thing with breasts and hips, non-surgical facelift, you have the same thing with breasts. So we had different types of wrap applications, and what we did with the peat is we've added aromatherapy. We add essential oils and herbal things in the wrap for different purposes. Like, for example, cellulite, we'd put wintergreen, red pepper extract, rosemary, all these types of plants that activate the circulation, increase body temperature and heat locally so that we have better absorption. We had one for relaxation with lavender. We had one for cuprose, and we had coffee extract and orange essential oil and bilberry seeds to increase the microcirculation for cuprose-based problems. All in all, it was always based on this peat application of the 5 benefits that we've always known, which was anti-inflammatory, cell regenerating, hormone balancing, chelator of heavy metal, and adaptogen. And then at the same time, in the aesthetic, where we added the astringent and the firming part of the peat.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds pretty comprehensive. And I totally get it. I mean, as someone who's also been doing this for a while, I get it, using the different types of essential oils for their own benefits together with the sort of fulvic, humic, and trace minerals as the sort of base, right, as the foundation. Yeah. So let's talk. So obviously that's the sort of external application, but I've been fortunate enough now to have been taking, fulvic and humic acids internally for probably the better part of 15 years now, maybe a little bit more, if I'm not mistaken. And I've sort of come across different products, here and there, and some have disappeared and some, have their sort of subtle differences. We won't get into government regulations at this moment in time. Yeah, because they're so complex, it's hard to give them a natural product number, because what does it do? We want to know 1 or 2 things, and what's in it. Well, we're not really sure because there's so many things in it. And so anyway, so I know that's one of the reasons why a couple of them have disappeared. But you said it earlier, and I want to sort of reiterate this point that most fulvic and humic acid products out there, or extractions, if you will, are, you said, around 8 to 10%, right? I've heard 7 to 11%, give or take, somewhere around there. And what you found in the Ottawa Valley is 36%, which is pretty significant, right? So what I've been taking of yours right now has really been the drops, and I quite enjoy them. I've been doing them probably at least, I would say, twice a day, give or take. And I do notice the concentration, right? It's not super thick, but it's black, and you can kind of taste it's real earthy. It's got that nice earthy, clean taste to it, which I love personally. But, as someone who's also researched fulvic and humic acids, I understand what the big sort of benefits are. I mean, we're sitting on a 70-page, 80-page document. There's tons of studies out there just in terms of the widespread benefits. But with regards to the internal application, right? So actually drinking fulvic and humic acids, maybe let's just start unpacking that a little bit, right? So what are the sort of main benefits? And then we can sort of talk about some of those as we move forward in our conversation.
Yeah, the main benefit is the mineral content, of course, because it has the 70 minerals that are in their periodic table. And again, the very little in macro elements, but a lot of them in trace minerals and very micronic trace minerals like 0.001 ppm for iodine, for example, and mercury. People say, oh, mercury, it's, toxicity.
Arsenic and so on, yeah.
Yeah, but we do need, mercury in our body. It's a component that we're made of that certain substance, but in a very minute property. So fulvic is organic. If you go back to the plant world, it's an organic structure. Our peat process is our peat. Not process, but our peat is organic. It doesn't come from leonardites, doesn't come from shales, or it doesn't come from the shilajits from the Himalayan, which are fossilized. When you're fossilizing, you're creating a lot of heavy metals, depending on the areas in which you extract the fulvic.
Tell me more about that, because I know a lot of listeners and students, for that matter, shilajit is very, very popular. So what can you just explain that a little bit more? Because you kind of rung a couple bells there, which I'm sure people would love to hear more.
Well, the shilajits are creating what they call a carbon 60. It's a big thing now, but it still comes from fossilized rocks formation, up in the Himalayas. So when you always look at fossilization, you have to use a very chemically induced extraction method. Number
Interesting.
one.
Okay.
Number two, they are now inorganic. When you fossilize something, it creates an inorganic structure. So the minerals that they take from there is inorganic. So that's why you have higher concentrations in these fulvic formulations. They have to take more. You have to take more because your body does not have the ability to absorb inorganic matter. That's the plant world. That's what they do. They take inorganic minerals from the soil and they transform it into organics.
Right. And so therefore we can absorb it.
Exactly. So why take it from fossilization when you can actually take it from plants? That's, for me, is a no-brainer. So yes, why are we talking about shilajits from the Himalayas? Because they've been there for a long time and they've been discovered a long time. We Canucks in Canada, the mudman from Casselman, I'm only been discovered now. I mean, it's like I've been at this for 30 years. I've been shunned for 20. He's a crazy madman. They used to be calling me madman, then become mudman. But in essence, the peat is an organic structure, and the fulvic is just as powerful in organic structure as it is in fossilization. All the other ones in New Mexico, all the American fulvics, they come from leonardites. So
what are those?
Humilite, leonardites is a fossilized fulvic. Okay. It's another form of rock formation, and they have to extract it with chemicals, and so they have to, and they lose a lot of fulvic. By the way, I mean you might get a lot of humic, but you lose a lot of fulvic, and so it's very minute in organic structure, and so that's the biggest differentiation that we can talk about in fossilization and in peat bogs, and so the mineral content in organics is pristine, it's pure, and it's at a level where your body will absorb 100% of it. That's why, we have 5 grams of fulvic in half a liter of water. You have your daily dosage of minerals at a ppm, which is the same as your body. Your body will absorb what it needs as far as organic structure, right? When you eat, and it'll just let go of the rest through your natural passages in your urine. So you'll never be overdosing of fulvic. You're just taking in what you need. It absorbs what it needs, and it lets go of the rest. When you talk about heavy metal, what happens in heavy metal? It goes into your cell.
Yeah,
it's hard to remove. So when you're absorbing fulvic that comes from leonardites or from fossilization, you're not only taking in nutrients, but you're also taking in heavy metal. So it's defeating the purpose.
Interesting. Now, one thing I just want to sort of interject here, and it's a little bit of a sidebar for our listeners. What they should know is that most people are, in fact, trace mineral deficient. And that's on a very basic level why we actually need trace minerals, because, again, modern farming and modern fertilization, et cetera, has really stripped the soil of a lot of the trace elements. Actually, a lot of them, even the macro minerals for that matter, a lot of them have really become depleted.
Yeah, calcium, for example. Where do we get our calcium source right now? We get it from cows. Well, cows produce calcium from the organics they eat, and they actually produce calcium lactate, which is an organic. the human body does not have the ability to absorb that calcium. What we need is calcium nitrate, which comes from the soil. I mean, it's like, when you look at the industry we created, is to create the industry, and the saying of my father-in-law 30 years ago that, milk from cows is to grow hooves and horns. That's it. I mean, nothing else. So it's the same thing for macro elements. We lack a lot of calcium in our bodies. And, we have an acid diet. We leach into our bone marrow. We become very acidic. And osteoporosis is a huge problem in Canada. But it's also because the calcium intake they were prescribed or they're taking is the wrong one.
Exactly. Well, and just to add to that as well, I think, what I've come to realize is that on a cellular level, oftentimes around the cells, when we're deficient, you go and get blood work done and your blood levels are always going to come out within range, right? You're never deficient from the doctor's perspective. But when you start getting inside the cell, a lot of people are deficient. That's one. And then, of course, bones is where we store a lot of the minerals. The bones are deficient. So, unfortunately, we only do bone mineral density testing when you're like in your 50s, 60s and beyond. And, I'm sure if we started doing that younger, we would probably notice that this leaching of minerals is happening a lot earlier in life. But one thing to point out here is that around the cells, when we're cellularly deficient, it's almost like the cells have put up a barrier. They've put up this block. And what I've noticed anyway is that the trace minerals help to metabolize the macro minerals. So, this is why people taking 1,000 milligrams of calcium carbonate or even calcium citrate for that matter, even if it's a good form. A lot of times, iron is another one. The reason why you can't get it into the cells, which is where all of your cellular or your body metabolism is happening, is because you lack the trace elements to actually get them inside. So you're sort of sitting with blood levels that are within range. You're peeing out a lot of the other minerals, right? And your cells are starving and your bones are starving. So I think, that from my side anyway is always been a very important point with regards to trace minerals.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and the trace mineral content in fulvic, they're all there. There's one missing. I mean, you can't. It comes from Mother Earth. It's very, very, equilibrium in that aspect of trace minerals.
Yeah. Well, just on one final note on absorption here before we move on, something that I think is also worth sharing is that that fulvic and humic acids will increase nutrient absorption, right? Basically, they carry 60 times their weight of nutrients into the cells, and then they carry 60 times the weight of toxins out of the cell, right? Is that's accurate?
That is very accurate, yes.
So let's talk about detoxification then, because I know that's another big area, an exciting area with fulvic and humic acids. So I'll sort of hand the mic over to you and let you go for it.
Well, detoxing should be something that everybody should look at every year. I mean, you should detox twice a year. I've always prone the detoxification process every change of season. We used to tell people, you change the oil in your car every 5,000 kilometers to maintain it. So we don't cleanse ourselves. I mean, we clog ourselves. We plug our digestive system. So when we eat more than we burn off, and we are sedentary, and we live in an environment that is toxic, it is obvious that our body becomes very chronic in stuff you got to get rid of. But the process of fulvic is that because of its nanonization, and it has the ability, it's so minute that it has the ability to bring in like 60 times its weight of garbage out. It's also because it has a negative ion current. So it actually goes into the cell and binds heavy metal through the negative ion. And then it just ties all these heavy metals onto it, and it's removed through the lymphatic system and in your sweat and your urine. Whereas when you're detoxing with fulvic, you also have to make sure that your bowel movement, your intestinal tract is well triggered to eliminate waste, and you got to look at your diets, and so. Combination of when you're detoxing, you gotta take fulvic on a high level, like 3 to 4 times a day, but you also have to drink a lot of water. Use natural laxatives like cascara or senna plants, and use cholagogues like dandelion and rosemary and blood purifiers, and make sure that you're purifying all the system at the same time.
Yeah. So you mentioned heavy metals, and I know that's obviously a very hot topic for people, because it's quite challenging to actually get heavy metals out. Is there any good literature on fulvic and humic acids detoxifying heavy metals from the body? It's a little tricky, right?
It's a little tricky because we got to do research, and so we know that lead, PCBs, phthalates, all stuff like that is removed from detoxing with fulvic because we did blood tests. But it's just when you're doing a 21-day cure, we want to be able to look at a 3-month, 6-month process of all we can do.
But I mean, at the same time, I mean, if you notice that in 21 days, I mean, it's not a far stretch to sort of say, well, look, if I was doing this day in, day out as a daily practice, surely, you might not be doing some crazy intensive detox, but you're almost detoxing on a daily basis, which I think is even more valuable, perhaps.
Well, yeah, because we work on we work on a maintenance mode where everybody takes it. We're maintaining proper elimination of waste. Not that to say that some days you'll absorb a lot more than you eliminate, and that's when you got to really do a good detox once in a while. But you're at least working on the building blocks of keeping somebody healthy by eliminating at least that waste during the day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So another big benefit that I've come across that I would love to get your insight on is antioxidants. So the antioxidant properties of fulvic, humic, and trace minerals.
Well, oxidization is the aging process. So, you cut an apple in two, put it on a counter, what happens? It oxidizes, it gets brown. Same thing happens on your skin. So, in the aesthetic world, we're always looking for antioxidant products, anti-aging.
Yeah.
Same thing inside. Same thing inside. So you're aging your digestive tract, your circulatory system, your lymphatic system. So the electrolyte properties of fulvic is that it increases the oxygen levels up to 45% inside the body.
Oh, wow.
So
crazy.
It reduces oxidization. How does it do that? Well, fulvic is made up of carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen. So, when the fulvic hits your intestinal wall or your gastric juices or whatever, it actually alkalizes your body, brings it up to a more oxygen prone body. More oxygen, less oxidization, less aging. So, am I going to tell you it reduces the aging process? You're damn right. And it's like there's a genetic company in the United States who was studying the effect of fulvic on the longevity genes. So if we take fulvic regularly over a 6-month period, they actually increase the longevity genes. So you can even change the DNA of your body by taking fulvic because of that oxygen level increases in the DNA.
Wow, so, that's insane. I mean, would they have just as a follow up? Are they also looking at telomeres? Did they look at telomeres by chance?
Telomeres and longevity genes, yeah.
Oh wow! So does this lengthen telomeres according to their studies?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
That's great.
So it actually stops the aging process, right? So we can say that it's reducing or maybe slowing it down, but hopefully one day we can tell people that fulvic actually stops the aging process. So.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously there's so many other variables that come into it, right? You can't be, eating cheeseburgers and French fries 4 times a day and slamming fulvic and humic acids back. Obviously it's not going to work that way. Just a disclaimer from both of our sides that, good diet, lifestyle, exercise, sunshine. Right. Exactly. exactly. I'm just trying to think. So any other sort of big benefits that you can think of that people might be interested in hearing about?
Well, we didn't talk about inflammation, but I can tell you inflammation is
please.
Inflammation is the first alarm signal that the body tells you something's going on in your physical body. So I have an inflammation of the knee. I got inflammation of the cardiovascular system. I have an inflammation of my digestive system. There's something going on. So for me, it was the first warriors to find somebody that was something that was anti-inflammatory. So even the fulvic, without knowing that you have inflammation, or it creeps up on you, so you live with that inflammatory purpose. You have a headache all the time. You have aches and pains in the morning. You have that really helps, because it not only works on symptomatic, because that's the symptom, but it works on the foundational, on the building blocks, because it has an adaptogen. So it actually helps anybody that doesn't know about fulvic and they have inflammation and it causes pain. They can start taking fulvic. They can start eventually taking a mud bath, and that is reduced, and then that's symptomatic. So I think that fulvic is even good for symptoms.
Okay. Yeah, so more acute type of things, right?
Yeah. And so instead of thinking of taking Tylenols or Advils or any drug ammunition, start taking fulvic. Now, it's not a quick fix. It's not something like when you take a Tylenol in half an hour, it's gone. But eventually it will work on the receptors of the the nerve endings, and it really will work on a reduction of inflammation. And at the same time you get less pain. So inflammation is another big subject on fulvic.
Well, and of course, inflammation, I mean, such a major driving force behind pretty well all chronic degenerative disease. I mean, I think most people agree on that, also known as the silent killer. Obviously overt pain is acute inflammation, which can be chronic as well. So now you got chronic pain, but you're aware of it. But there's, of course, that sort of real sinister type of chronic inflammation where you don't even know it's happening until, boom, one day you get diagnosed with something, without even feeling it in a sense. So, yeah. Wow. So, I mean, this has really been a fascinating conversation. And, I was looking forward to having you on the show, because I know that we've both sort of, you a lot more than myself, but both really been into this subject for a long time. And it's interesting, the more I talk to people about the subject, they get quite excited, because I feel like it's something that's really easy to do, but offers such a wide array of benefits, if that makes sense, because I think one of the biggest challenges we have these days is there's just so much information coming at you all the time. And there's the latest wonder product here, or the latest miracle cure, or whatever. And I think, what I love about this is that it's actually something that your body is designed by nature to actually have on a daily basis. It's not something that, we've sort of put together and formulated or guessing what you need. It's really saying, like, this is what your body is designed to operate on. And because we've lost it in the farming system, and because we're not getting it in the food supply, I think that most people would agree, we're at a net deficit for the majority of people.
Absolutely. And I was always, I'm the formulator. I'm not the formulator. I'm just a messenger. I think I was brought to this earth to bring the message of Mother Earth. It really is, because I haven't formulated anything. It just comes to me and says, okay, this is what you need to do. You start researching. Oh, that's great. Formulation is like adding essential oils and making it nice and pretty. But, in essence, the pristine fulvic mud that comes from there is the essential that you need for your body. And so,
100%. Something that just came to mind, and perhaps because I know, again, this is also a hot button topic, just before we wrap up, pathogens. So fulvic and humic acids against things like bacteria, viruses, yeasts, parasites, and so on. Any information there?
So it's antibacterial. The decomposing process, there's good bacteria and bad bacteria. When I was in extracting the peat and putting it in baths, we had to make sure that we had no staphylococcus and streptococcus and E. coli in the mud, right? Yeah. But you still had the good bacteria, which is the decomposing process. So there is good bacteria in peat. And so it actually helps the intestinal flora. So, in this form of fulvic that we extract, there's no more bacteria, because, we got rid of the water, we got rid of everything. But you're still helping the intestinal flora, because it has the availability to create your body into an alkaline state. But if we take the actual peat from the peat bog and we leave the peat, it's very antibacterial also. And so when you go to Nate Harting, they used to do a more drink. So it was, and then we used to do that. We actually just peat and water and drink it, or you put it in muffins or cake and you eat it. It really helps for the intestinal flora. It has probiotics, and it just helps the intestinal flora.
Yeah, and I would think as well. I mean, just from my own experience, anyway. The way I look at this is always it's such a powerful adjunct, or an add-on that can really be used in any type of program, right? So, let's, for example, say you are doing a hyper-targeted parasite protocol on a client or patient, or candida cleansing or whatever it is, right? Actually using it together with some of the more concentrated herbal antimicrobials and so on is very, very useful.
It's useful because you're using the adaptogen properties of fulvic. So you're giving the other agents building blocks. You're strengthening it. So that's why any type of treatment, fulvic should always be incorporated.
Awesome. Well, I know our time is sort of running out here, and I think we've covered a lot of ground in just under an hour. So thanks for coming on the show, Marc. I really appreciate it. And it's been quite an enlightening discussion, I got to say. And I think for a lot of folks listening, they probably learned a ton off this episode that they probably never knew about before. So that's fantastic.
Been my pleasure. And of course, an hour goes by really fast when I start talking about my own passion. So we can talk about it another hour if you want one day.
Totally. Well, so those of you listening today as well, thanks for tuning in. As always, I hope that you did enjoy today's episode. Check out the show notes, because I'm going to be putting some links to where you can find out more with what Marc is up to, and some of the products that he's involved with. And I think I'm going to leave it at that. Marc, any final words from your side?
Just start consuming fulvic and experience the effect of fulvic on your own, and you'll be amazed. It's not just me saying it. Make the experiment your own.
Yeah. Well, and also from a preventative, so even for those folks who are listening who are just looking to maintain a higher level of health that you already have, I think that I've always believed this long before you and I even met, that fulvic and humic acids are really core foundational elements that we should be taking in on a daily basis. 100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So,
absolutely.
All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Marc, thanks for coming on the show. And as always, if you enjoyed today's episode, please consider leaving us a review, subscribing to the show, and sharing this with your friends, family, or community. So I'm going to leave it at that. And you have a beautiful day wherever you are.